Hello and welcome to the topic. It's Ben here. We're back with you. Finally, BT have installed internet in my flat, so we are back on the web. No longer will you see our faces on the football terrace. Thanks to Terry and those guys for hosting us in our first 5-6 episodes. Now we're strictly a podcast, if that makes any sense to you whatsoever. We're coming through your ears and not through your faces anymore. Joining me as ever, we've got our regular Steve, and we've also got Kristan Heneage with us as well today. We can't wait to get stuck into this topic. We're not just going to be talking summer transfers, but we're going to be talking about so far this season the underrated and overrated players in the Premier League. Some will be summer moves, some won't be. Steve, a meaty topic to kick us back off this week.
Yeah, it is, mate, and obviously it's been one of them crazy summers and the prices has gone through the roof, and obviously there would have been a lot of failed deals we could have talked about, but yeah, it's a good one to get into today, mate.
Can we quickly, before we go to Kristan, Steve, I've left him out, and we all have actually, but really we should be putting this guy in this podcast. Nemanja Matic, we're talking about underrated players when he left Chelsea, and we had the Chelsea lot going on and on about how crap he is now and how he's through his peak and how he's gone past it. He should really be on this list, but we've tried to steer away from United players as sometimes we could be quite heavy with them. How good has he been so far this season, and how underrated is he in terms of his quality and what he's going to bring to United over the next 6, 7, 8 months?
Well, Matic has been class anyway, but me personally, I didn't expect anything different anyway. I think the thing that, obviously, there was a few United fans that were just like, why are we getting him, blah-de-blah, and it just didn't make any sense, because I remember a couple of years ago when we signed Schweinsteiger and Schneidlin, and I like Schweinsteiger, he's a good player, but obviously his best days were completely over. But Morgan Schneidlin was just like, I never really got the signing, to be honest, and I was a bit of an outcast with it really, because I just thought, well, if you look at stats and stuff like that, he was second behind Matic for everything. Matic just killed him all the time, and it was just like, why are we signing a player that isn't the best in the position? It didn't make any sense. I didn't think he'd make it United, and it proved to be true. I just didn't think he had everything in his locker to be a midfielder at the club. Whereas Matic, he just speaks for himself so far, and the guys unreal. He can do the lot, and I don't know. I think even like the guys on Sky just couldn't believe that Chelsea let him go, especially to a direct rival, and then replace him with Danny Drinkwater. It just didn't make any sense whatsoever. But you could have included him on this, mate, but if I was in charge, I wouldn't mention his name anywhere near overrated, underrated, and stuff like that. The guy's that's top drawer, isn't he?
Yeah, he's class. I'm surprised we didn't get a class out of you there, Steve. You like calling him players class. I'm a bit disappointed about that. Our special guest to kick things off, we've got a good one here. Kristan Heneage is with us, a football writer. You would have seen him do stuff for ITV Football 442. You would have heard his voice as well on the Wicked Front 3 podcast. Go and check that out. It is a brilliant listen. Kristan, thank you so much for joining us. What was it like picking your three? We've all gone through players. We're going to tell you what we think, whether they're underrated or overrated. We're then going to debate it, kind of, and give our own thoughts on each player. How difficult was it for you to compile a list like that? And are there any players you left out that you want to give a mention?
I think 5 years ago it would have been much easier because I was a lot more opinionated, whereas now I'm trying to be a bit more diplomatic, so I don't really like throwing players under the bus. In terms of players that were left out, I think there's a lot of obvious ones that doesn't matter whether you're in a press room or the pub, it will always spark debate. Guys like Mesut Ozil and things like that, who, again, I think they divide opinion more than anything else. But yeah, once you kind of sit down and you've done the fun bit of finding the underrated players, which is always nice, it comes down to the hard tack of essentially picking three guys to take shots at.
Yeah, and the shots that we'll take at them, sometimes are going to be good, and in some cases are going to be quite harsh. But Kristan, we'll start with you anyway as our special guest today. Let's pick one of your three. You've got Knockaert, Eriksen, and Marino. Where would you like to start?
Let's start with Knockaert. Let's get the tough one out the way. I just don't rate him. I don't rate him at all. I covered the Championship a lot last season, so I saw a lot of him, and I found most of the people who were singing his praises were probably not watching consistently, because one of the things about Brighton last season, they consistently counterattacked on teams. They've found they're more successful when they could sit deep, soak pressure up, and then spring. And that gave Knockout a lot more space than he's had in the Premier League. And so when everyone, or a lot of people, said that they expected him to step up with ease, I just didn't buy it. I thought there's a reason he didn't make it at Leicester. And I think if you look at the games he's played this season, I don't think his technique is good enough. I don't actually think he's smart enough to beat Premier League defenders. And the warning signs were there when they played their title rivals Newcastle last season, because Paul Dummett had him in his back pocket for 180 minutes. So I just, and then the fact that he won Championship Player of the Year, I know he scored more goals and things like that, but I didn't think he was that sensational either. He's one of those players that I think the numbers did him more favours than anything else.
Yeah, and you're right in what you said. He didn't make a breakthrough at Leicester. He's now 25 years old, so he's no longer a young player which we look for excitement from, or a player who we want to see run on the pitch and bring something different to the game. 9 so far this season matches he's played. He hasn't got a goal. He hasn't got an assist. Steve, in terms of Anthony Knockaert, have you seen much of him in terms of a player and an exciting player, which everyone's sort of raving about after his last season in the Championship? You would have expected to see a little bit more from him by now in the Premier League, wouldn't you?
Yeah, probably. I think, like you say, it's odd to just throw people under the bus, but he just screams Dwight Gale to me. And we were on about him a couple of weeks ago, and it's just like really good Championship player. Won't cut it in the Premier League, and I think he's just in a bracket of one of them. To be brutally honest about it,
he's a Dwight Gale. Gale. I like
so,
that.
So yeah, just one of them. Just can't. The Premier League is it's tough, and like it's all right doing wonders in the Championship, but there aren't that many that can just come through and, do you know what I mean, and step up. That's why when these guys do, they get I think they get the accolades, like guys who've done it with like Swansea in previous years and stuff like that. And for me, he's just a Dwight Gale.
Do you think it might be a case as well, Christian, that some people have seen his stats from that one season in the Championship, 20 goals, and thought, well, actually, this kid has got something? I mean, he did spend some time on loan. I know he didn't really score many goals there, and whilst he's at Leicester, he plays so many games at different levels. But I think I read something, doing some research, he only scored about 13, 14 goals during his whole time at Leicester, and is there for 3 or 4 years. So do you think it could be a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from Brighton fans trying to big him up more than anything?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It can be difficult to be objective when it's your player and it's your team. And I think that was the thing. Whenever I raised objections to him last season, it was always rooted in the fact that I had seen him play and saw the fact that he wasn't going to get those kind of chances in the Premier League. And I think, that Dwight Gale is a very good comparison because, again, he scored a stupidly high amount of goals in the Championship. I think he was on about a goal every 90 minutes. At one stage, and yet the problem he has is a similar one, is that the teams he's playing for in the Premier League aren't creating the same kind of chances. He's not getting crosses put into the 6-yard box where he can finish and find himself in space. So it's that difficulty of, yes, he scored a lot of goals, and I'm sure to those voting and people even watching, it looked like he was this awe-inspiring, brilliant player in the Championship. But personally, and admittedly maybe with a slight tint of bias myself, I thought Matt Ritchie was better. I thought he influenced games more. I think he does more. And if you look at his season already, he's already contributed, I think, 4 assists for Newcastle. So he's able to make the step up, I think, much more comfortably than Anthony Knockaert has been able to. And if I was Brighton and Chris Hughton, if I'm really honest, I know they turned down, I think, a bit of 15-16 million for him last summer. Yeah, it was great to keep him then because he got them up. If that same bid came from an ambitious Championship club in January, I would take it and buy someone else, personally.
God, that's big money, isn't it, to turn down after a good season in the Championship? Steve, let's decide on this one then. Christian's going for Knockaert. Overrated. I'd agree with it, would you?
Yeah, I'd go with that, mate, yeah.
There you go, then let's stick with that one. And let's move on to Steve, one of Steve's picks. He's gone for Pickford, Darren Fletcher and Arnautovic. Where do you want to start, Steve?
I'm going Pickford. It was the one that had pretty much annoyed me most of the summer, to be honest.
Why? What are you going for?
Well, I think it happened miles before the Neymar deal, and I just think that just sort of... I think it blew the market up here. I know, obviously, Everton just probably won't get the business done early, and honestly, when the news come through, and I couldn't believe what I was reading and hearing. Honestly, it just baffled me. And he was obviously, when you come up with the overrated and underrated, I'm just gone now. Pickford was the first choice for me.
What, so you're going Pickford overrated?
Yeah, by a country mile, 30 million for a goalkeeper. Again, I just think, to be honest, I don't really rate English goalkeepers anyway. I think you have a good couple of games and you overhype. We've had loads of donkeys over the years, like Chris Kirkland and Richard Wright, and the list goes on. And listen, Pickford might prove you wrong, but to go for 30 million and come with a big hype at Everton have done brilliant business over the summer. I think it just sort of wrangled me, to be honest, mate. So that's why he was top pick for me. I don't know whether anyone else agreed, but I just thought it was properly strange.
Do you know what? It's interesting, Steve, because when this transfer first happened, I'd done a podcast with Shoot the Defence. And it was with those guys, with Stell. And we were talking about Jordan Pickford, and I was the only one on the show who said it's an outrageous transfer. And people asking me why it's an outrageous transfer. He's a young lad. If he gives you 10 seasons and he's done good and the fee comes back to you. And I said, well, don't get me wrong. He made some great saves for Sunderland. But he didn't keep hardly any. He kept like 2 clean sheets in the whole season. And that Sunderland team got relegated. Now,
yeah, that's the thing that makes it. Fair enough. Obviously, you can't blame it all on a goalkeeper if he was conceding 6 every week. But like for me, he just kept the score down. And can you really judge a goalkeeper on that and then go, you know what, he's going to be top draw?
And he only played half the season. He only played half the season for Sunderland, and you can't say they improved when he did go in the net. So I've got to agree with the transfer fee. But in terms of the player himself, he's young and he has got talent. Let's say that quickly. He's young and he's definitely got talent. But is he as good as everyone makes out he is? Christian, what do you think?
To me, this is what I call the Scott Carson paradigm, and essentially,
I apologise on that. Yeah, Scott Carson.
Do you remember when Scott Carson went to Charlton and was brilliant by all accounts, but he was largely brilliant because he was busy at the same time? I think that's what happens here, and I think it happened to a certain degree to Simon Mignolet, in so much as he played in a Sunderland team where he faced a lot of shots and he had a lot to do. So it's naturally easier to build momentum as a goalkeeper when you're doing a lot. The truly great goalkeepers, your David De Gea's, Peter Schmeichels, are able to make 2 or 3 very good saves in a game and do nothing else because it's just when they're called upon. I'm still trying to work out with Pickford which is which. I think his goalkeeping technique is fantastic. I've had chats with David Priest, another former Sunderland goalkeeper, about that aspect of his game. I think his distribution, from what I've seen, is up there with the best in the Premier League. His ability to kick not just far but accurately is very impressive. And I do kind of subscribe to that thing you talked about before, whereas if you buy a £30 million goalkeeper and he stays there for 10 years, it's not a terrible investment, because I think there's a little bit of a dearth of good goalkeepers to begin with. It's always difficult with English players as well, because they're sometimes seen as overrated because they go for big fees. My heart says no, I don't think he's overrated. Just because of the fees that were thrown about in the summer, and I'm just not sure who Everton could have bought that would have been a better option. That's my only concern as well, is when I look at any player who's overrated, it's usually with the caveat of, but I can think of someone who would have been a better option for about the same money.
If he does keep, say, for instance, 10 clean sheets a season over the next 4 years and then goes on to a better club, is that a success, Steve? Is that underrated for some instance, now that we're chatting to him about being overrated? Because 10 clean sheets at Everton a season, they should be getting around.
Yeah, listen, if he's winning man of the match performances for Everton and stuff like that, you're going, well, Steve's talking absolute nonsense, and I'll accept that. But the thing I just don't get is it's just like, it's a hypothetical argument. No, yeah. It's a hypothetical argument. Listen, we bought Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw's going to be our left back for 12 years. No, fair enough, he's had a bad injury. United sold him now. They get hardly anything back for him. And we were saying, listen, we've made an investment, bloody. It's hypothetical. They don't always come off. How many next superstars, next David Seaman, next Ashley Cole? A lot of the time they don't work out. They're brilliant arguments, but again, they've spent But I'd say big money on a goalkeeper. You're gonna obviously expect results in, and yeah, if he's winning 10 man of the matches for them, and like you say, clean sheets and Everton have clearly massively improved, then yeah, it'd be a great buy. But the argument for 10, 20 years for a goalkeeper, no, it's unrealistic anyway, isn't it, really? Because it's that good.
Yeah.
Like, I think Butland will be in the same position at Stoke.
Yeah.
It's going to get to a point where it's just all plainly obvious a player's going to go in it. So, yeah, listen, if he does the business for Everton this season, their scouting's miles better than what I had. But I just had to put him in. Transfer was just, for me, was mad.
Pickford overrated. Kristan, would you agree with it?
He makes a very good point. Yeah, go on. I'll give it to you. He makes a very valid and impassioned point. I can't argue with that.
We give you that one, Steve. So we're all in agreement so far. Knockout overrated, Pickford overrated. Now it's one of my players. This is where it all goes bellies up. Should we keep with the overrated or should we change? Let's go to an underrated. And I've got to pick out this guy because for me, he's been the only player in the side so far this season that has looked better than the player who played there last season did. And that is Kolasinac, the guy who's playing left back, left centre back, left wing back, wherever Arsene Wenger puts him for Arsenal. This lad came in for a free from Schalke, and do you know what? I think he has looked absolutely fantastic. He's still a young lad, but he's doing the bits, and he's definitely an improvement on what they had last season, Arsenal. And I also think that he is looking solid as a player for Arsenal Football Club. He's got a range of different positions that he can play in. He's a bit of an animal. He likes getting a bit worked up. He doesn't mind putting a tackle in. And I just think he's settling into the Premier League quite easily. And the games that he hasn't played in, Kolasinac, Arsenal haven't looked as good. And that's when you know you've got a good player in your side. When a new guy comes in, he sort of looks good. And when he's not in, the team in general looks a lot weaker. So for 24 years old, to have an impact like that, I think is really good. And no one's talking about him. No one's mentioning that he came in for a free and was a very good transfer over the summer. Great business from Arsenal. Kristan, what have you made of Kolasinac so far this season?
Yeah, I think he's been fantastic. He's a very good attacking fullback, but he's also quite physical as well. And I almost feel Arsenal have been missing that. Someone who can rough people up and isn't afraid to be aggressive and dynamic at the same time. I think... then when you factor in that he's free as well, it's difficult when you start to write about the game and things like that. You do look at signings from a slightly different vantage point, which is the financial one. And to get the I think he was in the Bundesliga Team of the Year last season, to get that kind of quality player for free, I think that's one of Wenger's admittedly few successful signings, really.
Yeah, and quite a success so far, Steve. He's looking good, isn't he? And he's looking stable at the back. He makes them a better defensive unit.
Yeah, I like him. I try not to watch Arsenal because they bore me to tears, but I watched I thought he obviously scored in there. It was a Community Shield, wasn't it? And I remember after the game going, you know what, you look at a play and you go, he played well today. And I didn't even realise he was free until the end. They were going on about him. It just seemed like, I agree with what both of you said there. It just seemed like Wenger rolled back the years when he was just pulling out like really good players for like pennies, really, in today's market. And obviously, they've ended up getting him for free. But you just look at him and you just go, he could do really well here. I think that's how I'd look at it because the guy, he's huge, clearly loves defending, and you just go, yeah, you know what, throw him about. I think he could do well here. But saying that, I remember saying that about Mangala and. He was absolutely awful on him. I think Kolasinac should be better, to be fair. But yeah, I like him. It's a good shout, that.
Steve, don't make the Mangala comparison already. No Arsenal fan wants to hear that. They definitely don't.
Hey, no, listen, I'll throw him out there when I get him absolutely horrendously wrong. I was like, nah, man, this Mangala looks absolutely brilliant. I saw him at Old Trafford. And I think he got hauled off at half time. He was absolutely horrendous. He was awful.
Do you know what I like about both of your points? Is Steve, you mentioned then about how much he loves defending, and as you said before, Kristan, he's also a brilliant attacker, which is great to see. He's a player, I think through the years, the best left-backs that we've looked at have been brilliant going forward, but sometimes haven't been so good in defence, and that's what Kristan Heneage does. He does both jobs really, really well. The one thing that worries me about him and about Arsene Wenger managing him right now is that Arsenal are looking at that the five at the back formation, and he has played that left centre-back role a couple of times because he's big, because he's physical, and because he can do a job anywhere across that back line. But I don't want to see him there. I want to see him at left wing-back. I want to see him maybe at left-back in a back four, because that's where he's best. That's where he gets to get forward. Now, some left centre-backs do, and in the back three, have licence to push forward, but you want him to get into that space. You want him to be able to hug the touchline. He's got pace, he's got strength, he's got stature, and that's why I think he's underrated, because not a lot of people are talking about him right now. My argument, anyway, definitely underrated. Steve, Kristan, I'll hand this over to you guys. Would you agree with it?
Yeah, definitely from me.
Yeah, 100%.
Brilliant. We're all in agreement so far. Kolasinac, underrated. Kristan, let's come back to you. Ericsson, Marino, which one do you want to go with next?
Let's go Mikel Merino, I think.
The loanee from Dortmund.
Yeah, he's a loanee, but I think it's all but done and dusted that he'll sign for Newcastle permanently. And the fee is a large part of why I think he's so underrated. Essentially, he signed for Dortmund as a Spanish youth international under 21, and is still playing for them now. And in total, the deal will cost roughly £8.5 million to sign him, which is roughly the same as what Swansea have paid to loan Renato Sanchez. And it's a long season, and obviously Sanchez hasn't had the greatest of starts for Swansea, and he could pick up drastically. But I think in Moreno, you're looking at a player that is so impressive on the ball and has such a good range of passing. I just think it's a real bargain from Rafa Benitez. I know a lot of people want to compare him to Xabi Alonso because he can spray the ball around, but I think if you look at the fact that he did kind of pluck Alonso from relative obscurity with Real Sociedad, this feels like a similar type of deal, except he's come from a much bigger club in Borussia Dortmund. So I think the fact that he's managed to get him for under 10 million, it's crazy when you think that someone like John Joe Shelby was costing around 12 million, like trying to think, about 18 months before that, and he wasn't, I would say, nearly as well put together or bristling with as much potential as Moreno is. I'm
absolutely shocked that Dortmund are willing to let him go on a permanent transfer. I really am, because just to simplify it even, is a young lad who's 21 years old. He has had all those comparisons. He's in a squad there at Borussia Dortmund where they do like to bring young players through at around 22, 23. And he has gone and had interest at an English club like Newcastle United, and he's being coached by Rafa Benitez. Why would Dortmund want to so quickly go, actually, yeah, we're open to letting him go permanently? That's weird, Kristan. That's a weird one, isn't it? That's not usually how it works. Let's see how he gets on over the season and see if he can break through to the side.
Well, that's the thing. Their outlay for him wasn't huge. I think it was only a few million. So the loan itself, that fee will cover kind of the money that they lost. And then I think they saw the $6.5 million transfer fee as a decent profit, because, I mean, that's the thing. You never know how a player is going to take. And there was certainly some concerns when he arrived about how slight he was and whether he could, I hate to bring out that old cliche of whether he could handle English football. But I think, yeah, it's one of those ones where hindsight is always 20/20. And I think for Dortmund in particular, if they were to offer him around the league now for double the fee that Newcastle will have to pay, you'd have some takers without doubt, because he looks a very composed and very cultured central midfielder.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, Steve? Because I think, like many football fans, we were looking at Newcastle's transfer window, looking at what Rafa Benitez was saying as well, and thinking, boy, they've had a shit transfer window. Boy, they haven't got enough. They haven't brought in enough quality. Then we saw that they bring in this young lad from Borussia Dortmund, and we're thinking, oh, that's still not going to be enough, surely. But he's looking like a good player in there, isn't he? He's got good stature about him. He's still at a young age. He's got a good passing range, and he isn't afraid to go forward as well. Have you seen much of him?
Yeah, my mate. I've got mates who are big Newcastle fans. They love him, and they're in agreement with you guys. It's just like, fair enough. Obviously, they're surprised they've got him. Really, it's the fact that Dortmund, obviously, provide loads of players and stuff like that, and it's like, when usually if the price is right with like any footballer, then you've got to go. And it's the fact that I think it just seems so cheap. Not even in, like you say, this summer, just probably most. And they just thought, well, like you say, you don't know whether some are going to take, like you say, but yeah, I think the cost. I think they're laughing the bag off at the minute, aren't they? But I don't think. I thought I probably expected more with Benitez, to be honest, with Newcastle over the summer. But it looks like he's got that one absolutely bang on. And obviously, you mentioned there with Xabi Alonso, if he gets close to that level, he's done all right, really, hasn't he, for a boy? But as he was top draw. But yeah, like I say, my Newcastle supporter mates absolutely love him, so you can't get any further than that.
You mentioned Xabi Alonso there with Mikel Merino, but he is playing next to the bald-headed Xabi Alonso, isn't he, Christian? Up in Newcastle, that guy being John Joe Shelby. Can they play together? Benitez has sort of come out and said that they can play in the same midfield partnership there. Surely if they can get that one sorted out with Mikel Merino and John Joe Shelby, and he doesn't get pointless red cards, you guys would be all right this season.
Yeah, we got a glimpse of what Shelby and Moreno can do on Sunday against Brighton. Usually it's been Moreno and Hayden, but Hayden just hasn't really translated to the Premier League. He's a lot of good intention, but not much quality. And I think on paper it's slightly concerning because neither is that defensively minded in terms of you couldn't see the putting I was going to say crunching tackle, but Jonjo can certainly do that. It just tends to be...
just miss the ball.
It would just give them a lot more control in midfield. So, yeah, I think it could work. It might actually free Moreno up to advance a little bit further, or even Jonjo, because they've both got, I think, an attacking intent in them. But they do prefer to sit a little bit deeper and hold. And interestingly, Benitez seemed to switch to a back three at one stage. And put his wing backs out wide and push them forward, and then you had Shelby and Moreno holding and spraying from there. So they've got a little bit of versatility and a manager that likes to tinker. So yeah, it's I could easily see the pair of them playing together, and it would be a fun experiment to watch, I think.
I think Mikel Merino as well, and I hope you're happy with this comparison, because I'm a massive fan of Emre Can. And I think Marino's got a little bit of the Emre Can in him, where he knows when to hold. At times he can be a bit rash, but he's also good at timing a tackle. On top of that, he's good at running forward, and he's just got that physique in the middle of the park, where the midfield position never looks empty, because he's got that sort of physique about him, and he's got that sort of look about him in the middle of the park. I like Mikel Merino, and for that I'm going to completely agree with you. And put in mind that my first reaction before I saw him play, and I saw that he signed for Newcastle, was like, wow, you know, a 21-year-old from Dortmund on loan isn't going to solve their problems. The fact that now I've seen him play and I've seen what he could bring to the side and the deal in hand as well, I'm going to agree with you there, Christian. Definitely underrated. Steve, what are you saying?
Yeah, I'm going to agree on that one as well. We're all in agreement.
We're doing well today, aren't we? No argument so far. Steve, please say something controversial with your next one. Fletcher or Arnautovic, what are you going for?
You know what? I'm going to go Arnautovic. I'm going to say Fletcher for last.
Okay, what are you saying about Arnautovic?
I think Stoke must be laughing the bag off. I really do. Obviously, Stoke haven't turned up. They didn't turn up at Newcastle. I thought they were awful on Saturday. But Arnautovic for, was it 24 million quid from a guy who's like one, I'd say, a good season for a Stoke level, and he turns up when he wants, like 1 in 10. That sort of money is, and West Ham's just like a graveyard for strikers. Anyway, the numbers when they sign strikers are horrendous. I had absolutely no idea why. Well, you see why he's gone there. They've gone there for, they're probably paying him stupid money, but I thought Arnautovic one. And if I'd have put overrated, underrated, I'd have probably said, I said to you ages ago, West Ham's business as a whole. Everyone was just like looking at the Joe Hart loan deal and Zabaleta for free, and the one they did pay big money for was Arnautovic. You got Hernandez, what you'd say relatively cheap, and I just thought, people are just, again, like for me, just putting the names down on a piece of paper and judging it on that. But when you delve into it, I don't think they did brilliant business at all. And I put Arnautovic for me the top, wouldn't say top of that list.
The top of the overrated list this summer. There we go. Overrated.
Definitely for West Ham's anyway. For like to say, Pickford won it for me, but then I put Arnautovic in there.
Okay, Christian, Arnautovic overrated. He was good last season, and to quote Jose Mourinho, we're now going to be paying big bucks for good players. So when it comes to a 24 million price tag for Arnautovic, I don't know if we can whether we can say it is worth it or not until the end of the season. But right now, he's been sent off. He's played 9 games. He's got no goals. He's got no assists, and I think he's turned up probably in one of the games that we all spoke about and went, he's all right today. What have you made of Arnautovic, and what do you make of Steve's statement there?
I totally agree with Steve. He's in that school of Mario Balotelli for me. I think he's got talent, but he's frighteningly inconsistent. And I think I wouldn't level the same at Balotelli, but I don't like his attitude on Arnautovic either. There are as many daft stories about him as I would say stories about what he's done on the field. I mean, he borrowed Eto's Bentley for a few weeks and got it stolen in Austria, things like that. It's all just really mad stuff with him. And I think he's spot on. To pay 24 million for that, it says so much about West Ham and how just disorganised they are as a football club. Their scattergun approach to transfers is very much a case of, have we heard of them? Great, let's sign them up. Because it's guys like Joe Hart and Zabaleta for, I imagine, obscene amounts of money that will not produce to the level of expectation. And I think if you look at Arnautovic's better season, I think it was padded slightly by penalties to a degree, which is always something. Again, I can't imagine David Gold and Sullivan have heard of analytics.
The Dildo brothers, as they're known as.
Yeah, I was just going to say, given what sporting characterised them as. So yeah, and then you look at his attitude from start to finish. He's in his career, he's been a bit of I'm trying to think of a polite word for it, a bit of a nuisance, shall we say? And I just saw nothing in him that would change when he got to West Ham. I think if anything, putting a £24 million transfer fee on someone like him will only reinforce everything that he thinks about himself, negative and positive.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you both say, and I completely agree. I think that was it last season or the season before where he had a worldie against United. Like, he played really well, and ever since that moment, all I've heard is people talk up about him, and he's never been that great, to be honest. And all you've got to do is look at his stats as well. I don't like to talk too much about stats because I think that's Statman Dave's job on all the different channels. I mean, I'm not one of those guys, but if you look at performance per competition in the Premier League, he's had 129 games, he scored 22 goals and 27 assists. That's not great, is it, for a player who's meant to be so good and is such a great attacking force? He's got good stature about him. Look, he's probably a striker more than a winger, I think, just because of his build and because of most of his goals, as you say, are penalties. Most of his assists are just lays across the box, and most of his goals are tap-ins, apart from the odd one or two here and there. Steve, is there anything else you'd like to say about Arnautovic before me and Christian agree with you?
Yeah, he ain't going to listen to this anyway. The boy's on silly money, but he has got. I've always said, I saw him at Stoke Station a couple of years ago, and he's got the best walk that I've ever seen.
The best walk?
And honestly.
Try and describe it.
It's the most. No, honestly, it's the slowest, most arrogant walk I've ever seen on a. And obviously, footballers, a lot of them are arrogant bellends anyway. But I mean, honestly, I've never seen someone move so slowly with such a swagger. And I remember just laughing. Honestly, you should. I'd love Sky show that and walking into the ground because it'd take ages. It's just brilliant. That's the only thing I've got positive to say about him. He's got. Like I say, he's got the best walk I've ever seen on another human. But for your club to pay, like you say, good money these days for a player that isn't going to produce probably at all or even often enough, not for me.
Was he strutting his stuff whilst carrying a Gucci toiletry bag as well?
No, oddly enough, they were just waiting on a platform because they were playing West Ham. Oddly enough, the next day, so they went down by train. It was like a Friday afternoon or something. Me and my mate were going. Birmingham Christmas market or something. He wanted a picture of him, and I was just too busy laughing, just him strutting up the station. It was absolutely brilliant.
Well, on that reason, I hate him more. Let's both agree, shall we, Christian? Arnautovic overrated, yeah?
Yeah, I liked him at FC20 all those years ago. I thought he was really good, but he's just Few sandwiches short of a picnic.
I like that. That's a good summary. There we go, Steve. We're agreeing with you. Let's go to my second one then, and let's talk about underrated. Harry Maguire. I like this lad. I like him a lot. I think he was definitely the best. I'm going to say he was the best of a bad bunch at Hull. I think in the end, though, Harry Maguire, in terms of his defensive abilities, he got that transfer to Leicester. And I think this season has looked solid for them. Now, what I like about Harry Maguire, he's not afraid to play with the ball. He is a ball-playing centre-back who's happy to run out. We saw it a few times against Liverpool. And don't get me wrong, he did make a mistake or two against Liverpool. But I like that bite in a defender. I like a defender who if he does make a small mistake, he's happy to go again. And the next time he doesn't make a mistake, I remember a couple of times that Liverpool goal, he made a mistake. But then 5 minutes later, he ran out the defence and created a chance for the Leicester City attacking players. And I like that about him. I also like that he's a good defender. He's a great header of the ball. And he's just solid, and he's still quite young as well in terms of his age. He's still 24 years old. He's still got a lot to learn. He's also come through the ranks. I remember he spent time, didn't he, at Sheffield United. He spent time, of course, with Hull, and he's now playing for Leicester. And I think he was around 15 million, I want to say. I don't think that is bad whatsoever for Harry Maguire. He's got a bit of Premier League experience behind him now. He's playing with a better group of players. They're bringing the best out of him. He's looked solid. And he's definitely a player that if he carries on like he is now and he keeps learning from his mistakes, he's going to be breaking through to that English side. And I think with Harry Maguire, you've got a player there who can give you consistency over a number of years if he does just do like Rio Ferdinand. When Rio Ferdinand first came onto the scene, when he went to play those passes and he'd missed a one or two when he had a simple ball on, he learned from that. So when he turned 26, 27, he came on and he really matured in his age, and he really matured as a defender, and he was pinging those balls at the right time. He was playing the right passes. With Maguire, he needs to learn when is the right time to run out with a ball, and it will come. That maturity will come for him. And for that reason, with the years coming up, for the fee he was, and for how much he excites me as a defender, I'm going Harry Maguire. So far, I think is one of the most underrated signings of the transfer window. Steve, have you seen much of Harry Maguire?
Yeah, I've seen bits, and I try not to go down the route of, I saw him against United, and I thought he was absolutely top draw that game, mate. I'll be brutally honest. And
you did. He was great. I forgot to mention that.
When you're watching defenders and players, no offence to Hull, but it's Hull, and you're just thinking they're going to get beat every week, and have they got any shining lights? But obviously, I know Leicester won the league a couple of years ago, but I thought he was light years above anyone else on the pitch, really. To be honest, even though we gave Leicester a good hiding, he just seemed to be there like all the time, and you were just thinking, he can play this, but I do really like him. I'm gutted I haven't really got him in me free, to be honest, and you've had him, but I really like the look of him. They say I just hope he keeps progressing with it, and I think Leicester was a really good move for him, and he's definitely one watch out for this season, playing with a lot better team, and they've still got some good players.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. I forgot to mention the United game. I think it was top draw against United. Him and Wes Morgan seem to already have combined a really good partnership there, which I'm absolutely loving. And I for some reason, mentioned the Liverpool mistakes more than I did actually how good he was against United and how good he has been in the games before the Liverpool one. Christian, what have you seen, Maguire? What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think he's improved drastically. At first, I wondered if it was just Marco Silva's influence, but I think, yeah, you're spot on when you say that watching him with Leicester, he's clearly grown a few levels and become a decent passer of the ball as well. He seems more than comfortable bringing it out of the back, and of course he's not perfect, but I think when you put it in the context of, as you say, he's an English centre-back, so could play for the national team at some point, and you know, a fair few years ago now, Chris Smalling cost about £10 million. You put that alongside the fact that Maguire cost 15, 16 million. Yeah, I think it was actually a really good bit of business, because that's something that is, I think, sometimes ignored, because the Premier League has become a bit of a League of Nations in that sense and embraced outside influences. But if you can get a reliable English player for a good fee at the same time, I think you win in the transfer market without question, because you do need to fill those quotas at the end of the day. You need those 4 players trained in the country or whatever it is, or at the club, and 8 in the country. So yeah, for me, I don't think Leicester will ever be in danger of that because they seem to embrace that English core with the likes of Vardy and such. But I think, yeah, it was an astute bit of business, and no surprise that it was done quite quickly in the window, because I do think, a bit like Rafa Benitez says, the quicker you do your business in the window, the less you'll probably end up spending in the long run.
And it's a player like him who I'd like to see in the England setup as well. I just think he's a little less boring. He's a little less safe, and well, not less safe. I don't like to say it like that because I'm not really praising his defensive contributions. But what I mean by that is he gives you an option coming out of defence. Where England, we tend to play the likes of Phil Jones and Cahill, or we tend to go with the players who aren't willing to take a risk. There we go, shall we say? I like the fact that Maguire is like, what was that?
The dull.
There we go. I like the fact dull Gareth Southgate. I like the fact that he takes a risk. But Kristan, in terms of Maguire, the players I say he's got around him now in that England setup, Michael Keane, you would say John Stones, wouldn't you? You would say Phil Jones as well. What does he have to do? Gary Cahill in there as well, to break into the England starting back to? What does he have to do differently? What does he give different to those other players?
I think consistency that's really it, because I think if you can it sounds so obvious to say that, but sometimes I think players get so obsessed with, I need to be different, or I need to offer something different. Actually, if you focus and hone on your own game and perfect that to the point where someone can pick you and feel that they are gaining a reliability in terms of what you'll give, that to me is more influential than trying to diversify yourself and say, okay, well, now I can play out the back, or now I can go on these marauding runs like, say, John Stones. Because if it's not within your wheelhouse, then it's just going to come off poorly and reflect poorly on you. Certainly improve your game whenever you can. That's I think, an important thing to consider. But at the same time, don't try and drastically change yourself to adapt what you think England want. Be consistent with it, and you'll get your turn eventually. I mean, even Kevin Davies, all those years ago, got one England cap, and you could say it should have come sooner or whatever. But I think you look at someone like Ricky Lambert, who wasn't a sexy pick in that regard, but he was consistent and he offered something and he got his chance. And I think that's what something like Maguire will do, because I think we're at a stage with England right now where we are starting to look a little bit sideways in terms of, it doesn't have to just be 23 from the big four. I think we're more willing to embrace players from further down the league to make the best squad possible, rather than just the 11 best English footballers playing in the Premier League.
Yeah, no, spot on. And you mentioned those players there. Screaming out in my head, Jermaine Defoe's another one. He didn't really get as many England caps, and he really should he? He's more at a later age. And you got to say with Defoe, you would say he's a little bit more sexy than the likes of Davis, but he's a goal scorer. And that's what he done, and England weren't willing to embrace that. They wanted someone who could hold the ball up, play it here, have a little bit of skill here, be able to go there. But then again, it's also about the players in and around the side, and you've got to say England now defensively haven't got the best setup, where England back then attacking wise probably did have a much better setup than the England defensive one now in terms of quality of player. But you're right, with Maguire, if he can get that consistency going this season, he's got to be a pick at centre-back for the World Cup. He's just got to be, because he's a good footballer. He's great with the ball. He's great at defending. So if he can consistently do it, why not trust him to play centre-back at the World Cup for England next to the likes of Phil Jones? Again, Phil Jones is another one. If he can stay consistent, he's got to be the first pick at centre-back for England, because he's quality. So it'd be very, very interesting. A huge season coming up for him. Even more reason to see more from him and more progression. Steve, Kristan, again, you both going to agree? Underrated?
Yeah, I completely agree on that one, mate.
Kristan?
Yeah. 100%.
Perfect. Let's move on then. We're all in agreement so far. Kristan's final one is not a summer signing, but is a guy which I think fans last season very much underplayed, and this season are finally starting to give him the credit he deserves, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would. I think, again, not wanting to sound too capitalist, but it cost 10 million from Ajax, Christian Eriksen. I appreciate that string of signings that were all unveiled together. I think Capu and Lamela was in there as well. There was a number of failures in there, but from that surrounding of rock and mud came this diamond that is Christian Eriksen. And you could sell him tomorrow if you want for 50, 60 million, or demand that amount, if not a bit more. But I think at the same time, he's just such a wonderfully elegant player. And it's funny, I mentioned David Priest before. He played with Eriksen when he was very, very young. I think he was like 16 or something, and tells this great story about him in training and how effortless he was. And I think you see that now. He's not someone that's maybe an aggressive or explosive runner or anything like that, but he just seems in complete control. It just seems as if he's got that extra second in his head that a lot of people around him don't seem to have. And personally, alongside the likes of Sane and Gundogan, I just love watching him play football more than anything.
Yeah, no, I've got to agree, and that effortless comment is spot on. He just glides, doesn't he? He just flows around the pitch. A couple of things I want to hit on, Steve, before I come and ask you a question. Number one, I loved it at the weekend where people on social media, and I think an interviewer did as well, made a big thing out of the fact that Christian Eriksen is the highest scoring Danish international in the Premier League that has been, beating Nicholas Bentner's current Premier League record for Danish goals. Love that. What a landmark that is for Christian Eriksen. He's in good company. And Jan Vertonghen, they said that Christian Eriksen should now be ranked among the best playmakers in the world. Steve, would you go for that? Is he one of the best?
I like him. Honestly, I really do. And I remember, this is before, I think, obviously Spurs bought him. If you remember back when United were in the Europa League and we had Ajax and we ended up beating them, and Eriksen, obviously United were looking for midfielders anyway, and he played really well, I think, in both games. And then I think the reason probably why we didn't even buy him was the fact that we had Bilbao when we went through, and they absolutely tore us apart, if you remember, and Ander Herrera was a part of that with Javi Martinez and stuff like that. And then that's where the Herrera links come through, and it was like, well, United should try and get both, you know what I mean? It was always sort of that nagging thing in my mind. You should be buying someone like Eriksen. He just looked top drawer even so young. And then when Tottenham got him, and every time I've seen Tottenham at United and stuff, he's just one of them that your eyes are drawn to. He's silky, really is, and he's quality. And like you say, obviously Ali's taken a lot of the plaudits, and he's been brilliant, to be fair to the boy, for 2 years or so. But Eriksen, like I think Kristan said it there, I think isn't that sexy sort of name, is it? It's always Ozil, De Bruyne, you know what I mean? That sort of thingy. But I really like Eriksen. It's a great shout, that is.
Eriksen's a good shout. Definitely underrated. He's got everything in terms of he's got good skill. He's good going forward. He doesn't mind sitting behind the ball either if he's got to do a bit of a job. Don't get me wrong, he's not the best defensive player, but he doesn't mind putting in a shift for the team. Free kicks, set pieces, phenomenal. Got a wicked boot on him. He can score goals, he can assist as well. But should we be shocked, Christian? At under 19 level, from that moment on, he is in the Ajax ranks. He was in that very famous, coming through a very famous youth system. Should we be shocked by his talent, putting in mind they were his roots?
No, I think that's a good point. The thing with him that was so interesting was he had pretty much his pick of clubs in Europe. It wasn't too dissimilar to Martin Odegaard. Chelsea put offers in for him and all that kind of stuff, but he made it abundantly clear he didn't want to go to a club like Chelsea because he didn't think he would get the opportunities. And I think there are enough promising youngsters, English and foreign, that you can look at, the likes of Ryan Bertrand and even maybe Ruben Loftus-Cheek this season, who give some kind of weight to that theory that you can go to a big club and you can learn from what are theoretically the best youth coaches and work with the best facilities. But if you're not going to play those first team games, it's going to be neither use nor ornament to your development. And I think when you look at his time at Ajax, there were obviously a lot of, I would say, promising players within that. I remember they went to Man City one year and I think they won 2-0. I could be wrong on that. I just remember CM de Jong scoring from a corner. But you look at that team, and you look at the fact that De Jong, funnily enough, did come to England and just really did flop. Didn't suit the style of football. Wasn't really built for the game. I think that shows the sort of maturity that Eriksen had. That he knew he needed to learn the game somewhere, but he also needed first team opportunities to put that into practice. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for doing that, because it can be so easy to be enticed by the money and agents and clubs telling you that, yeah, you'll be fine, you'll get into the Real Madrid first team at this age and you'll do this. And I think it's why, for me, I still see a further step in his career, and I know it might really annoy Tottenham fans to hear it, but I can see him leaving at some point to go somewhere bigger.
Oh, he's a perfect Barcelona player. He literally is a perfect Barcelona type player. Just the way he glides across the pitch, the way he passes the ball. The only question I've got about Christian Eriksen is, and I think it sort of sums him up in the positions he's sort of been playing this season. Is he a left mid? Is he an attacking mid? I mean, he's got the second most crosses in the league so far this season. He's put in 52 crosses in the box, where he's been playing a little bit further out on the left. But in terms of assists, I think he's popped up in the league with two, I think, or I think it's 4 assists, 2 goals, something like that. Anyway, so he's providing, and also in the Champions League, he's already got one as well. He's providing, and he is taking chances. But in terms of a position, Christian, where would you say he plays?
It's difficult because you spot on when you say that he can very easily play in a left wing role, or he can at the same time play more centrally. Mm-hmm. I would personally like to have him centrally. I think it's fun to watch him drift inside and do that kind of thing. But at the same time, I just think he has more control when he's in the middle. And I think, again, you spot on to say that he's the perfect Barcelona player, because I think he fits into that style, can find pockets, and you just need to look against West Ham. That pass for Dele Alli that essentially carves open the entire of West Ham's back line, which admittedly was suicidally high in the first place. That to me is the kind of thing that he does that I don't know if there's another Spurs player that does it. Ali's a great attacking midfielder who scores goals. Dembele carries the ball brilliantly. Wanyama breaks stuff up. I mean, Son's a good runner, but there's no one. If they were to lose Eriksen tomorrow for whatever reason, I would be really worried if I was a Spurs fan, because I don't think you've got that lockpick like him in any other player.
Here you go, Christian. I'm going to let you off the hook here, since you just answered that question. Steve, who's the better number 10, Christian Eriksen or Dele Alli?
You're going to... That's what I mean. Overrated category, but listen, Ali scores goals. That's the thing.
Steve, you haven't said a name yet, mate.
Oh, I'm back in my English, boy. I'm going Ali.
Oh, there we go then. But you would agree with Christian that Christian Eriksen is very underrated.
Of course he is. If he come out like he said in that bit there, he said the lockpick, and I think that summed it up absolutely superbly. I think that's the one. And they lost him. Yeah, they're going to be in trouble. Like you say, you lose. Like I say, Kane and Ali and blah blah. Eriksen is important as a lot of the others, but I like watching Dele Alli.
He is a lockpick. He is the key. DJ Khaled needs to find him. There we go. There's a term for rap fans. Christian, there we go. We'll all agree with you. Eriksen is massively underrated. Steve's looking like DJ Khaled. Who's that? Let's move on to one of Steve's picks, and his final one, Darren Fletcher. Overrated, right, Steve?
No, I'm going under because it didn't add up for me. Why? That West Brom obviously didn't sort of give him what he wanted. Like I remember, like the shows we used to do, and I was just saying Fletcher is coming at his time at United, and it felt harsh because obviously the stuff he's had, like say 2011, 2012, it's been a long time, and ever since he left United in that window, and he's barely missed any football, and he played. I thought he was brilliant at West Brom, even with Johnny Evans as well. And yeah, Stoke picked him up, and obviously given, I think it was the 2 years he was after and stuff like that. And I just think he's a brilliant buy for them. He's hugely experienced. He can do a lot what you need to play in the middle and stuff like that. And yeah, I had him in. I had to mention him. Is it just say you want one of them that are under the radar? And I thought Fletch was a brilliant bit of business. And
sorry, mate.
Yeah, go on. Yeah,
sorry,
go on.
I was going to say, Christian, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because we don't know whether it's for contractual reasons that he's gone to Stoke, because Pulis made him the captain straight away. He seemed to be doing well at West Brom. We don't know if it's that he wanted to move closer to family, maybe. I don't know if maybe the family stayed in the Manchester area, and obviously... So I don't really know why, and I don't think anyone's really said...
because he wants to live round here, mate. I will tell you that now.
He wants to live in Stoke. He's got the house next door to Steve, so he'll be able to get us the inside information. No idea why, Christian, but for footballing reasons, Do you get the move to Stoke?
Yeah, because they're a sort of similar sized club, really. Stoke and West Brom. They're always trying to break into the top 8, but maybe not necessarily being able to achieve it with any consistency or qualify for Europe or anything. So yeah, I can understand it. And at the same time, I think perhaps he would have to do less work at Stoke. Not to say that he's lazy. I mean, he's obviously overcome a lot of personal difficulty to maintain his career to this stage. But you look at that Stoke team and you've got Shaqiri, Arnautovic, Choupo-Moting at one end, and then the likes of Zuma and Shawcross at the other. I would imagine you're doing less in that team, or you're being given more responsibility on the ball and being allowed to maybe play with it a bit more and actually build something. Whereas West Brom, whenever I watch them, it's not about building complicated chains of passing or anything like that. It's a very simple and I would say for the most part effective style of play, and maybe for someone like Fletcher who's come from a big club like Manchester United, maybe that's not what he really wants to do. I would imagine he's after something maybe a little bit more cultured than that.
Yeah, and it might be quite interesting as well, like you said there, Christian, that it might just be the fact that the sort of different styles of football. Tony Pulis now and then, when the going gets tough, doesn't mind the long ball football, doesn't mind the sort of the shortcuts to the way you play. Whereas Mark Hughes does like to keep the ball on the floor quite a lot, doesn't he? And that's where Fletcher sort of excels. He likes to keep the ball on the floor, he likes playing the passes, he likes spreading it mostly side to side. So you're right, there's not really that responsibility there, is there, for him? And he's not got the captaincy anymore. So, well, he does actually. He's still captain in Stoke. Is he captain in Stoke now? I think he wore the armband last weekend.
I think, yeah, Shawcross is still the captain, but he's got like a really bad back problem in it, so he's not back anytime soon. And yeah, a lot of their senior players are injured anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, well, Steve, actually, let's come to you now, because we're both Reds. Remember what Sir Alex Ferguson said about Darren Fletcher. He wanted to give him his debut before he's even legally allowed to give Darren Fletcher his debut in the Premier League. This is a guy who Sir Alex rated very, very highly. So why now are people underrating him?
The thing is, he didn't really get the best of starts with us, because I remember going back like to 2004 and 5, and I remember when he first started breaking into the side, we were playing him at right mid, and I remember the crowd used to get on his back, and I was one of them. I'm not even going to say I wasn't. He couldn't control a ball. I remember once, I think we had Blackburn at home, funny enough, and that was under Hughes. The ball's come out to Fletch, and he's put his foot out for go and control it, and obviously try and whip a ball, and it's gone straight under him, straight for a throw, and you've got 60-odd thousand going, Jesus, what's Fergie seeing this guy? It did take him a while, to be honest, and Fergie started playing him in, I'd say, a lot of the big games, and I remember the season he missed out on the Champions League final because he got suspended, and I want to say 08-09, and he was absolutely unbelievable that season. I thought he was superb, and I think even the challenge on Fabregas was absolute world class, and just felt sorry for him. And even after that, he stayed big games and come up with big performances and big goals, and that's what we liked. And obviously when he started missing seasons because of obviously what he was going through and stuff, it was a bit gutting, and obviously United tried and get him back and it just didn't work out, so he had to go. But phenomenal to overcome that and keep playing Premier League football. And I think even Rio said, didn't he, that Fergie was a big favourite with him being Scottish, and he was invited round for tea and stuff like that all often, so he used to get digs from the rest of the United lads and stuff like that. But Fletcher's cool, and yeah, he's obviously still showing he's a quality player. But yeah, like I say, I think it was stop-start, and did have a couple of years of being brilliant. 08-09 sticks out for me. I don't think the Champions League final would have been different that year, because Barcelona were frightening. They tore us to bits, but it'd have been less embarrassing if Fletcher had played that night in Rome. I don't know whether you agree, but
yeah,
that's
all.
And
there's a couple of Champions League performances that season as well. Was that that was the year that we beat Roma 7-1, wasn't it, as well? Was it that year or was that the year before?
I think that might have been the year before, yeah.
Might have been the year before, but he gave Carrick the licence to go forward. And that never happens. And he played with
Carrick 2 worldies that night as well, didn't he?
He did. And you mentioned there about Sir Alex Ferguson and Fergie having a lot of time for him and taking him under his wing. I think we underrate the amount of experience Darren Fletcher has, the amount of football intelligence he has got. He is an all-rounded, really good player. And he's definitely a leader as well. Definitely underrated. From what he came back, the determination, I think spot on. Christian, would you go with underrated Darren Fletcher as well?
Yeah, actually, I think for longevity as well, where everyone's talking about Gareth Barry because he's going to break Ryan Giggs' record this week. I think you have to keep an eye on Fletcher as well because he's been consistent and he's had obviously personal things to get over. So yeah, I think there's maybe a little bit of lacking in appreciation for Fletcher there.
Talking about consistency, Christian, my next guy is who I want to talk about, and that's Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. This is guy Mr. Never Consistent. And the reason why I say that, and actually I'm going to take this back. I mentioned this to you guys before we started recording. I had a conversation with my partner's dad, Simon, who's a massive Liverpool fan. He knows his football. He's really great to have a chat with, unlike some Scousers when you sit down and try and talk to them. Guys, I'm only joking. I know we're popular in Liverpool. More Everton side than Liverpool side. However, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he said to me, is a Premier League proven player. I don't get that term, and I don't get how it can be brandished to Alex, because for me, a Premier League proven player is a player who has consistently proven himself in a certain position and in a certain team in the Premier League who has managed Premier League consistency. Now, Arsenal is a side that hasn't been consistent for so many bloody years. And Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, now, when you talk about him, and you talk about Ryan Giggs in his prime on the left wing, Paul Scholes, central midfielder, Steven Gerrard, central midfielder, Wayne Rooney, a striker, came back to number 10 later on in his career. When I talk Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I can't tell you what position he even plays on the pitch. I don't know. I don't think this guy has had any consistency so far, whether you can blame him or his manager or the way he's been brought through in the era he was in. He played for England, had a blinder on his debut, didn't he? Just like Theo Walcott did back in the day. And he just hasn't been consistently played in one position. Then there's rumours that he hated playing out wide and he wanted to play as a central midfielder because his idol Steven Gerrard. And now he's playing right wing back at times, and now he's gone to Liverpool. They're sort of playing him all over the place. I just don't know how you can say Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is a great signing for Liverpool for 35 to 40 million. For me, Arsenal should be laughing to the bank, a bit like we said earlier on with Arnautovic and Pickford as well in some circumstances. I just think he is massively overplayed because he's played at a top club. You saying Arsenal are a top club for all of his career so far. He came through a great Southampton setup, but I just don't think he's ever got going. Christian, what do you make of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain? And is he a great signing for Liverpool, like some people are making out?
I think versatility can often mask mediocrity quite well. There are victims of it like Owen Hargreaves who actually suffer because they're so versatile and can't establish themselves in one position. But with Chamberlain, I think that the thing is he's got, obviously the fact he's English helps him a lot. But I think at the side of that, he's got a lot of physical assets, which are he's quick, he's an aggressive runner. He can carry the ball, I would say, fairly well. I would say better than, for comparison's sake, Wijnaldum. I don't think Wijnaldum is a great ball carrier on the counter-attack. The problem is you need to work with his decision making, and I would say sometimes his technique in terms of crossing and things like that. So what you're doing is you're paying a big fee in 35 million for potential rather than a finished article, which is really what you should be doing. And I think, yeah, you're right in that regard that he's overrated in the sense that I wouldn't have paid 35 million for him. I think he looks like a great player on paper or on highlight reels or whatever. Things like that, where you can, conveniently edit and string things together. But for me, I haven't seen the same player that burst through with Southampton, because that was the thing. When he came through and he was so precocious, he was exciting because he went at people, he went past them, he opened up spaces for Southampton, he drove into the box and he scored goals. He doesn't do that at the minute. You're right, I'm not too sure what he does, because he's been shunted into this right wing back position because I think realistically Wenger looked at him the same way that Conte looked at Victor Moses and said, well, he hasn't really got any major qualities, but he's athletic and he'll run up and down for the 90 minutes, so let's put him in there and see what he can do. That's not really enough to spend 35 million for me. I think he needs something else, and I'm very curious to see what Klopp does with him, because you would say that side is much better set up for him than Arsenal are, because Liverpool are a very, again, direct, aggressive side that like to counter and gegenpress and all those buzzwords. So it's a better fit for him, but I haven't seen anything yet to suggest that he's about to have some epiphany and that it was actually all Arsenal's fault.
Do you know what? The one thing he probably has in his favour, Steve, is that he's still only 24, so he's still a young lad. He's got loads of experience behind his belt in terms of things he's done wrong. He should have learned by now from his mistakes. He should know in his head what position he wants to play, and he should have a manager, putting in mind he's just made a massive transfer, who has, who has confidence in his ability to play that role as a footballer. Would you say that we've still not seen the best of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and that the best is still to come, Steve?
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on him, I think, purely because I think Liverpool have looked at him and gone, Arsenal's record of, like, I don't know, like improving players that, like, I mean, Ox obviously went there after Theo Walcott. Theo Walcott is quick, he's going to do this. Has it worked? No. A lot of Arsenal fans just say he's grown a beard in the 10, 11 years he's been there. Oxlade-Chamberlain hasn't grown probably at all. Wilshere was another one that didn't really get... And I think Liverpool have looked at it and gone, well, that's just Arsenal's fault, that's Wenger's. They're just a stable. They just stay where they are, don't they, really, top four. I know they didn't get it last year, but I think that's what Liverpool have sort of really bought. I like him. I think he's a good player. Obviously, when he come through at Southampton, he's inconsistent. He's had his injury problems and stuff like that. But I've got to be honest, Ben, I'm 50-50 whether put him in an overrated thing myself. I agree.
Overrated.
I haven't seen anything that he's done at Liverpool so far. So yeah, it probably sways
because it's been horrendous.
I hope he doesn't do anything there because I hope they get relegated. But saying, like I say, I haven't seen anything from it. But again, it's still early doors in the season. Again, what Kristan said with the fee, 35 million for me, £35 million. I know obviously we're going about the market this summer. £35 million player like we spent on, like, say, Matic. Matic for me can affect Champions League games, which is where the big clubs who Liverpool have spent a lot of money this summer. They're in the top four. They should be aiming to shock the world and win the Champions League that they did 12 years ago under Benitez. And for me, Ox isn't going to control and affect big Champions League games against the big boys. So where you could say that it doesn't really, unless, I don't know, what is their ambition this season? Like, say they spent 70 million on a player that are going to sign next season. What are they banking on? That the market's going to go to £300 million for that sort of player? I have no idea because they need improvement now. But I'm 50-50 on him, Ben, I'll be honest, because I think he could make it.
Just to end this one, I've got to say, we're talking about whether they're overrated or underrated. Now, I think Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is overrated just because of, and I'll say it again, the massive cry of happiness when he signed for Liverpool on that day that promised so much and gave him really so little in the end, just Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I'm also saying he's overrated in terms of how good everyone said that he was going to be, and so far he's been shoehorned in and out of positions constantly. I'm saying he's overrated because of your point you just made there as well. If you throw him on with 20 minutes to go, and we're now saying he's a central midfielder, he isn't going to influence games with the big teams. He's not going to be or make a big difference. I'm also saying he's overrated because of his start with Liverpool. He hasn't been brilliant. And I think Kristan mentioned it earlier on. He's right in what he says about these guys who have time to just put little clips together of him doing bad things. All footballers do bad things during games. You're completely spot on. But when that's all he's actually doing in a game, that's the worrying part of it. And I remember watching a couple of his substitute appearances. So he does need games. He does need to get into the groove. He is playing mainly a midfield role now, but he was definitely looking better at right wing back. Now, I like the fact that he wants to be this Steven Gerrard. I like the fact he wants to play central midfield. But sometimes you've got to say to yourself, well, I've got the talent to do, like Victor Moses has, to play right wing back. That's where he looked better. And for some reason, he has said to himself, well, actually, I don't want to play there. And I think that's an overrated arrogance inside him that thinks he is better to play somewhere else. And that is also why I'm calling him overrated. And that is my rant. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is as crap as the next guy, in my personal opinion. For England, I hope he comes on, but I just don't see it happening. Kristan, Steve, hand this one over to you. For the final one, are we going to be in agreement? Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, what are you saying?
Yes.
Overrated from Kristan?
No, I'm going to disagree with you, mate. I'm going to listen inside. I'm going to disagree with you. I can't have that. It was a good rant, though. I'll give you that.
Okay, all right.
Well, there was a lot of passion. I can't have that with the Ox, man. I can't have that.
What's great about him? Why can't he have it? What's he actually got? If he lined up next week in central midfield against Manchester United, you would know that he is their weak link. You would say, Steve, you would say...
2 weeks, man. If he bags a winner, I'm coming for you.
You would say, without a doubt, if Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is starting in midfield against Manchester United, he is a weak link in that Liverpool team. So why isn't he overrated in your books?
Well, no, listen, they've got see what they buy him. They've got Henderson, and I know you said you're a massive fan of Chan. I think Chan's a decent player. I think he's good on occasion. I like Wijnaldum. I liked him at Newcastle. I thought he was a decent buy for him. But I think he was paying like 20 million, 25 million, and I agree. I think you can throw a blanket over a lot of them, and I think Ox worse than Henderson. I know you're saying a different, but Henderson's horrendous footballer.
Well,
you know what I mean? So
we'll have to come back to this conversation, I think, mate.
Yeah,
we're going to have to come back to this later on in the season, or maybe at the start of the World Cup, and see how we get on. We could do a World Cup special, who was overrated and underrated in Russia. I think that's all for this week, guys. Thank you very much, Steve, once more. We always go to our final question to our guest, Kristan. Of course, we know your Newcastle roots. How are you feeling this season? Is Benitez going to last the full season, and is he going to keep you in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think yes to both. If there's one thing I can say about Rafa Benitez, having been up close to him, he's quite a principled fella. And I think more than anything, out of respect for the supporters, I think he would stay until the end of the year and then assess. I think at the same time, it doesn't really make sense for him to quit. When all the West Ham stories were floating around, I never personally believed that he was even close to going, because transfer window was about to or had just shut, and West Ham were a mess, to be quite frank. After the summer, or after this time 12 months, I honestly have no clue whether he's there or not. But in terms of keeping them up, yeah, I think it'll be a slog. They don't have a potent striker at this point. Alas, there aren't 20 Romelu Lukaku's out there for everyone to go and buy, unfortunately. But yeah, I think there's enough quality in there to keep them up, which is a blessing, because I was very nervous towards the end of August, I must admit.
Well, I'm going to say it. It's good to see you in the Premier League again. It really is. It's great to have Newcastle back, and I'm not looking forward to that away day up in the top corner. Is that where they're still chucking the away fans?
Unfortunately, yeah, there was talk about bringing them down. And funnily enough, when I was a teenager, I used to steward at St James's Park, because, free games and all that. And I did a few away sections up there, including Man United, the famous 2-2 game. I say famous, It's famous for Newcastle fans. It's not famous for Man United.
I thought you were going to say the 5-0 then. I was going to
No. How old do you think I am? Christ.
Don't insult our guest, Steve.
Cracking moisturiser I'm using. But yeah, and I always remember walking up those stairs. Actually, walking up wasn't the issue. It was when you would come back down. It was so, I don't even know the word for it, just kind of unsettling. Like you could feel your legs sort of shake a little bit as you realised how high up you were.
Oh, it's mental, isn't it? It's so up in the corner, but then still, fans still get to hear them because of how the ground's built. It's an amazing atmosphere. St James Park. I've done a stadium tour there once, actually, and I think they always tell a story about Man United in there. I think they destroyed something one game in the dressing room. They had to pay out loads of money to fix it, or was it something to do with a sprinkler system? Something like that anyway. It'll come back to me one day. Thank you very much, Kristan, for joining us. Make sure you go and check him out on Twitter. All of our links will be at The Topic Pod. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks once again to Steve. We'll be back next week with another episode of The Topic. Make sure you subscribe on all good podcast outlets, and make sure you keep downloading, and tell a friend too. Why not? You'll make us smile. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. Ciao for now.